Hello everyone, this is Amna Salimi. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I have been getting a lot of questions and queries regarding human resources, the practices of human resources in modern business, and that is what I have to discuss today. Why is human resource important, and how can organizations and nations achieve competitive advantage by the correct management of their human resources? Human resources literally means workers and the employees of any organization. So, you see, the more motivated your workforce will be, the better they will perform. Human resources are one of the factors of production. When we talk about factors of production, this means that without human resources, without labor, without workers, it is very difficult to execute things. You see, you can't have robots and machinery and advanced technology, and you can't really make sure that that is going to change things or that is going to turn around a situation. That can't be done. Human resources and technology cannot function in isolation. They have to work together, they have to be amalgamated, and managers, good leaders have to make sure that they are utilizing their human resources in the best way possible. We alone cannot solve our problems, especially because of intensified competition and the rate of globalization and the way markets have expanded. It is very important to have skilled labor, to have professional labor. Your introduction is the opening paragraph of your assignment or your answer, and it is very important that it has to be a very solid introduction. A good introduction is going to catch the examiner's attention, and it is going to give you the competitive edge. If you want a distinction, if you want a high merit, if you want good grades, it is very important that you're not just the main body, but your introduction and conclusion has to be very solid, very good. The major 3 points which have to be included in your introduction. Firstly, you must mention that 1980s witnessed increased competition, the rate of globalization and market expansion was very high, competition was intense, and international landscape was transformed. It was basically transnationalized, internationalized. So this was the time which was marked by Japanisation. This era is called the Japanese era. Why? Because this was the time when Japan regained its power, regained its economic strength, and made sure that it came on the global stage back again as a very competitive market leader. So this is the first point which you will be answering, which you will be writing in your introduction. And the second important point is that when technological innovation took place, the Western firms or the US firms, they started to recognize that the Japanese economic system was developing, and it was the result of the Japanese culture, the organizational culture, and their HR practices, which were very good, which were brilliant, and because of which their productivity, their profitability, it was increasing day by day. Third important point, which you must not forget, is that you will be mentioning classical scientists, Ford, Fayol, Taylor, and Weber over here, and you will tell that they always saw workers as automatons, as robots, and they never, they basically neglected the human factor of the organization. Every organization has a technical factor to it, a mechanical factor, and a human factor to it. Workers are working, and machines are also over there which are providing support to the organizational activities. But human resources will always be important. Western beliefs by Taylor, Ford, and Fayol, by the classical management, were quite rigid, and Japan wanted changes in that. Why? Because they figured out that because of the Western practices, because of the practices of the scientific managers, productivity was declining. Not just productivity, but product quality was declining, and it was suffering. So they had to change their management ways. The only thing that you should not miss is that when Japanese economic system was revealed in front of the whole world, theorists were more interested in knowing that how did Japan revive itself? How did they manage to restore themselves? And when we look at the examples of Toyota and Honda, we see that they are giving the world a very tough competition. But and also when we talk about appliances and electronics, Japan is very competitive. So how did they do that after getting destructed? Now this is important. You should not miss it. The answer or the secret lied in the Japanese organizational culture. Their organizational culture was so flexible that they managed to recover from the great loss. The scientific managers were neglecting the rights of the workers, the sentiments of the workers, and they were not bothered. They were only considering quantity. They were also neglecting that because the workers are not motivated, they are not producing qualitative products. And there was a serious setback which was a result of bad human resource management. So this human resource management, this concept, this study, this department in the organization was a remedy for failed Fordism basically. Fordism and Taylorism and all those practices became obsolete with time and they were failing. So there was a need for better practices, for improved practices, for latest practices. This is why we always talk about the era which is 1980s onwards. The second paragraph of your answer will be about cost or investment. So some nations consider the management of human resources a cost, while the others, they take it as an investment. So in one situation, it is a cost. If we are short-sighted and if we are not considering things in the long run, then it is a cost, because human resource management simply means recruiting, selecting, training your workers, training your employees, and that involves money, that involves time. So for some countries, for some organizations, it is a cost, it can be a cost, but for the others, it is an investment. And particularly talking about Japanese firms, they take it as an investment. They take it as something which is beneficial for them, and it is going to provide benefits in the long run. But if we talk about Western firms, we talk about UK and USA, they take it as cost. It is very simple that if any organization, if any country needs a workforce which is trained, efficient and skilled, they need to invest. They need to invest time, they need to invest money, and because of this, the company is going to incur costs. But this is only going to be in the short run. Once you have skilled labor, there is nothing like it. They will be motivated, they will be trained, and they will be very advantageous for your organization. Another point which should not be missed is that organizations' internal competition should be encouraged. Competition within the organization is a very good thing. It is a very healthy thing for the employees. So when they are more trained, when they are more skilled, they will be more competitive. And when your organization will be competitive, when organizations will achieve the competitive edge, so will the nations. Every nation is successful because they have a healthy culture, a good culture, in not just in their organizations but in their nations. Another point which you should not miss is that when you are training your labor, basically you are creating ILM, which is the internal labor market. So internal labor market is always going to be very supportive for you. It is going to be an asset for you, and this is why one should invest, a good manager, any leader should invest in the training and higher education of their workforce. In the next paragraph that you'll be talking about is organizational culture. Why to relate organizational culture with human resource practices? Because culture plays a very vital role when it comes to management. What is culture? Culture is your values, your beliefs, your norms, your school of thought. All of this which is embedded in your brain, in your personality, shapes up the national culture or organizational culture. After this discussion and your answer, you will have to compare economies, you will have to compare UK with USA, Japan with China, and you can compare Western economies, all of them, with the Asian economies. In Asia, we have Japan, China, Malaysia, Singapore, Bangladesh, even Pakistan and India. Then you will be discussing that what are the differences in the practices of human resource management in the developing nations and the developed countries. So, moving on to this, you have to talk about the JES, which is the Japanese employment system. Japanese employment system is all about welfare, social welfare, and retaining your employees and retaining them for good for the rest of their lives, and making sure that they have lifetime employment. And then they also have pension schemes and enterprise unions. This is all the Japanese employment system is about. In your next paragraph, you will be discussing industrial relations. Industrial relations basically means balancing of organizational practices with any requirements that are arising from collective bargaining and from government laws, which involves workers and organizations. Industrial relations has its roots in the Industrial Revolution. So, during the time of the Industrial Revolution, the economies were very challenged. They were wrestling with social issues and economic issues, inflation, unemployment. And at that time in United States, job was very monotonous. When we talk about the classical managers, that reminds us about the monotony of the jobs. And the wages, they were very low. The working hours were very inflexible. They were very long working hours, and social threats eventually were leading to social economic threats. So therefore these industrial relations were formed. They were created to address all of these problems, and negotiations and arbitration, collective bargaining, trade unions, they all started to come into management practices. Now, when you talk about industrial relations, it is important that you talk about trade unions. Number one, you explain briefly what are trade unions and how are trade unions working in the USA and UK. You'll have to research for some examples as well. And then you'll talk about collective bargaining and arbitration. Work councils are a body of employees formed by an employer, and negotiations and arbitrations are done in it. So now these work councils have always been very notable when it comes to human resources in Japan and Germany as well. When we talk about the work relations, we'll talk about employment relations after this. In the employment relations, there are a few important points. Number one is the internal labor market. You'll tell what is the difference between the ILM and the ELM, internal and external labor market. Next thing that you will talk about is education and training. This is specifically about the labor of any organization. Germany and Japan have the most trained and experienced labor. In Japan, multitasking and training is a very important part when it comes to gaining specific skills. And the School of Industrial and Labor Relations in Cornell University was the world's first school for college level HR study. So you can always mention such examples in your answer. Then you'll talk about Germany, that Germany sets up vocational training, training camps, so that their students can work part-time and they can get training. And all of this is managing your human resources. So this is going to give you a competitive edge as an organization. It is going to give you competitive advantage as a nation. Learning is a continuous process. It doesn't stop. As long as you are working, you are alive, you are learning every day. And this concept of organizational learning always creates a well-trained and skilled workforce. Now, in the conclusion, you will state that it is important for every organization to understand that their workers, their human resources are very important for them. Technology alone cannot solve any problems. So this was human resource practices. Any questions, any feedback, any queries that you would like to share with me, you can comment below in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon for latest updates. Thank you.